Hello and welcome to the Boxing Promoter podcast with myself, Jack Blair. On today's podcast, I will be discussing artwork within the game, what's in there at the moment and what we could bring in future. I will also discuss the release date and kind of what the hold up is and when we're likely to get a final release date for the game. In the boxing world, it's kind of a little bit dry at the moment, so the one thing to talk about and to kind of get interested in is the upcoming World Boxing Super Series in the Cruiserweight and Super Middleweight divisions. I will touch on that a bit because it's really starting to take shape now. And then finally, I will answer some questions that have come in from Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Let's start with the artwork in the game. So there are three types of artwork within the Boxing Promoter. That is the UI and just kind of the general artwork on the majority of the screens. There is the artwork with the boxes themselves, and then finally there is the special artwork that's been done for the individual promoters. The UI, just to discuss that slightly, I really like the design within the UI that's been constructed by the team. I think it's quite fun. It is boxing related. You've got the lights in the background and things like that. It is it's quite basic. I didn't want a lot going on because it kind of distracts you from what it actually is. If you look at some of the famous management games and management apps, sometimes less is more. If you try and put so much into that UI screen and so much information and colours and different things, it kind of distracts you and it's a little bit too much. So we've kept it simple. I think the colour pattern, hopefully you guys agree, I'd love to know your feedback, but the colour patterns and kind of the palette we've used is quite nice. It's quite clear. It's a little bit low key. There's no big bright colours in there, which is good because this is boxing. It's not it's not really a bright coloured sport, to be fair. The second bit of artwork. Let's go on to the promoters ones because that's something that's quite easy to discuss. The promoters one. These were specifically done pieces of art. They took a load of designs and kind of examples from myself. If you look at them, you probably know who they're kind of designed based on, and I kind of took inspirations from current, past boxing promoters as well as other people in popular culture, etc., and combined them to try and make these promoters, which I think will resemble enough to kind of be recognizable faces, but not so much they're just completely taken from somebody, because I want the game to seem like a kind of a different world. It needs to resemble what is actually going on out there in the British and the USA and other boxing scenes, but it also needs to be different to them. It's a different boxing universe. There's a lot that's missing from what should be in the that's in the real world, but then it can also be a little bit more fun than what's in the real world without some of the politics and issues that you often encounter. Finally, the final bit of artwork, which I kind of want to talk about more, is the artwork with the boxers themselves. So the original idea is that we were going to create every boxer to look individual, and we were going to create them within this 3D, I can't even think of what it's called, but it's like a kind of morphing program where you can just create all your 3D modeling programs. So it's a 3D modeling program. You build them in there, and then you can import them into Unity and kind of have them motioning in there. And we wanted to do that for every character and get them motioning in the game. To actually implement the motions in that fight scene, when we tried it didn't really look good at all. It actually looked a lot worse than it does now with the just the silhouettes. But yet the artwork was kind of done for them. So these are just a kind of 2D snapshot of them 3D models, and the 3D models are now not needed. What that means is it kind of opens a door for us now that we know that we don't need these 3D models. Should we just focus on 2D artwork and make all of the boxers look a lot better? I'll need to get quoted on that, which is what I'm waiting for. But if I get the quote, and this is actually a question that's come in as well, saying from Paul Altai saying, will you have any artwork tributes to any famous boxers? And I think the answer to that is maybe. I'll wait to get the quote back from the artists to say, I think there's like 300 different boxers within the game. So it will need to have 300 different individual pieces of art, because if you're going to do it, you may as well make them all look completely unique. And if we are going to do that, if he says that and I agree to the money that he quotes, then there will be 300 unique looking boxers, and why not? We can make them some boxers obviously look similar to real life guys, and if boxers do want to be in the game, then we can speak to them and see if they do actually want to, and we can make one to not only to look like them, but to actually be them within our game, which would be fantastic. So that's what I'm keeping an eye out on. I will give updates. Obviously a lot of it comes back to this quote from the art guys. If it's something reasonable and something that I can afford, and I believe that it will improve the game enough, then absolutely I'll pay for it, and we'll get some really, really good new artwork in the game. And it shouldn't take that long. The artwork generally, as long as you can get it scheduled ahead, then it shouldn't take too long to get it, and then to implement it in is fairly quick. You just need to associate it to each fighter. So that's kind of an overview of what's going on with the artwork. I'd love to hear more feedback. It's one thing I haven't really heard that much feedback on throughout all the beta testing is what people's opinions is of the artwork itself, with the UI, with the promoters themselves, and then with the boxers. Because I'm it's not ideal that so many boxers look identical. I don't think it's a good experience when you've got your fighter fighting his identical twin for the World Championship. That doesn't look good. So I'd love to know how important that is in the game, and whether or not you think it will be really, really fundamentally important for me to, get this quote and to get some really new, unique artwork in for all of the different boxes. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So that ties in quite nicely with the next point that I want to bring to is release date. And the game's been in beta testing for like a couple of months now. So I suppose a lot of people are thinking, even though they might not message me it, why have we still not got a release date for this game? I initially said that it should be 1 to 2 months and we should be good to go. I was completely wrong with that. That's just me being a little bit naive with how long these things take. So the bottom line is the current version of the game could be released. The bugs have been fixed. Maybe take a couple of days, add in all the dialogue, and we'd be good to go and release by the end of the week. But in its current format, this is not what I want to release. I believe that there's a few small things that need to be adjusted, and maybe a couple of larger things that need to be added before I'm completely happy that this is the game that I want to release to market. Because obviously I've got a lot relying on this. I think the first impressions from everyone, particularly people that don't follow me on social media and that haven't seen me communicate with everyone and take all the feedback on board and things like that throughout the last couple of months, they'll give it one try, and then maybe there's something that they don't like about it that I have noticed, haven't done anything about it, they'll uninstall it and never install it again. Because they won't see that I'm maybe wanting to bring something in the next month, etc. So a lot of people you only get one chance with, and that's why I want to make sure this first version of the game is as good as it can possibly be within my budget. So that's why there's a delay on release date, because I've got a lot of kind of requests out at the moment with what I want to add into the game, like the artwork and other things like that I do need quotes for. If it's something that is definitely going to be done by the team, then they just go ahead and do it, and they'll be able to give me a time scale. But because it's stuff that I'll need to pay for, I need to receive a quote from them and an understanding of time scale. Then I need to give them the go ahead on it and get that sorted. So once we get a lot of them quotes back and I get an understanding of exactly what I want to add to the game before it's released, I can then start feeding some of that back to you guys. And once I've agreed to all of the updates that I want to bring in, obviously paid for it, etc., then I'll be able to say, okay, this is the amount of artwork that's going to be done, this is how long it's going to take, and this is our target release date. And then obviously just keep you up to date on that. So I would love to tie the release date. I don't want to, obviously when it's ready, it's ready. What's great for me from like a marketing point of view and publicity point of view is to tie in the release with a boxing fight. Unfortunately, we have got pretty much nothing at the moment, and in America you've got the Broner Garcia fight at the end of July, and then you've got the McGregor Mayweather fight in August, which are going to be fairly big fights. But in England, there isn't really anything going on for a couple of months. So I'm not really sure what to do there. Maybe I look to tie it in with the Mayweather-McGregor fight. I'm not sure, but yeah, we'll see what comes back with the quotes, and then we can give maybe a further update in a couple of weeks on a podcast or on a blog about where we are, and hopefully publish a kind of official release date that we are targeting. I don't want to be one of these people that just keeps on moving the release date back and back and back. I'd rather know everything that's going to be in the game and then just tell you an exact date that I know that we can work to. So that's where we are with release date. More information, as I said, on that as and when I get it, and obviously I'll pass on all the information via my social medias. So on to the next part, which is discussing a little bit of what's going on in boxing, because basically there isn't really a lot. There's a Matchroom card on this weekend, which again I was thinking of going to it because it's at the O2. I like the events at the O2. Joshua Buatsi's a local lad for me, and he's making his debut. But there literally isn't a fight on the card that actually interests me. The main event, Buglioni is a far more experienced fighter. I don't think Summers has actually fought a fighter with a winning record, so Buglioni should get rid of him in the first 6 rounds. The Cheeseman fight will be competitive, and that's the only actual competitive fight on the card. And for me, boxing is about seeing 2 fighters go at it, regardless of what level they're at. 2 fighters who are competitively matched, going at it in a good scrap. Seeing seasoned Olympians and amateurs knocking out journeyman fighters. It's okay when there's like one fight on the night like that, but unfortunately it looks like a night where there's going to be like 6 or 7 fights which are going to be over in the first round, and that's, for me, that's not entertaining. But I suppose it's different for different people. Having said that, I will still tune in to watch Buatsi make his debut. Other than that, there's the upcoming Frank Warren card, which looks decent, with I think it's called The Future Is Now, and you've got Daniel Dubois, Anthony Yard. I think Yard's fighting for the Europeans, or I think he's fighting for a belt. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think Hughie Fury's back on, but he's going to be fighting Parker in September, so he might have pulled out of that now. But there's I think Bradley Skeet as well. So there's a quite good card on there with some more competitive fights. So I think that's on the 8th maybe. And yeah, there's a few bits going on. Then you got the Eubank card the following week. But there's not a massive deal out there in British boxing. In America, I've already mentioned the Broner Garcia fight, which should be a good fight. I'm surprised the odds are so high with Broner, because I think Broner does have a chance. I favour Garcia, as everyone does, but I think the odds are basically the same with Broner to win as McGregor to win, which is crazy because Broner's like a former world champion and a very, very, very good boxer. So I find that really, really strange to believe, but that's the way it is. The other thing that's going on, which I do want to discuss, is the World Boxing Super Series, which I'm really, really excited about this. I've always said that boxing needs to do more tournament-based fights to really, really draw in the crowds, especially for boxers who are maybe free agents or don't really have that crowd following. It gives them a chance to really kind of showcase their abilities on the top level, and they will have to take some risks to do it, because in these Super Series you maybe don't get the A-list fighters who know that they can run their own shows and get loads of money that way, but you get kind of like the B-level fighters, but you get them all fighting other B-level fighters, and it should make for like a really, really competitive series of boxing with fights happening every month, every couple of months. I think the draw is going to be made in September for the super middleweights and the cruiserweights. The super middleweights looks I think Jamie Cox just joined. Cox maybe isn't world level, but he's not far off it either, so it will be really, really good to see a fight with him against like George Groves or someone like that. George Groves is in it. He's kind of heading up the super middleweight division. And the cruiserweights, you've got lots. The cruiserweight division is dominated by Eastern Europeans, and it has been for a while, but you've basically got all of the champions in the cruiserweight division, barring Bellew, Bellew's probably going to stay at heavyweight anyway. So you've pretty much got all of the champions in the cruiserweight division who are gonna sign up for this event and fight each other, which is just fantastic. See some great scraps in there. So that's one to definitely keep an eye out for if you're into that type of competition. The tournament format, 8 boxers in each weight division fighting each other through to semi-finals and finals. So one to keep an eye out for is the World Boxing Super Series. So that brings us to the last part, which is answering a couple of questions that have come in. First one is from Martin at New Age Boxing. What is the biggest challenge that you've come across in this process that you never envisioned when you started out? So it's a really good question. If you haven't listened to Martin's New Age Boxing podcast, then please do. It really is an awesome podcast. They basically just rant and rave about boxing for couple of hours was the last one, so it's really good, really entertaining, really good views on boxing. So to answer Martin's question, I think there was 2 things that kind of challenged me the most that I didn't expect. There were a lot of things that I did expect to challenge me, which went on to do so, but a couple of things I didn't expect. One was having to take things out of the game, because I kind of thought that I put everything in there that I wanted to make, and then when I was sort of told that, basically I'm not going to be able to afford the game that I want, I'm going to have to strip it down and make a game that is part of the game that I want. And doing that and deciding what to take out of the game and what bits to cut and crop and things like that, that was really difficult, because, all that's going on in my head is kind of thinking about the things that I wish were still in there. However, from looking at the feedback from the beta testing, a lot of it has said that they would like to see them things in the game that have been cut out, but no one really sort of came out and said, no, it doesn't work without X, Y, and Z. So looking back, I think I made the right decisions with them, but it was definitely a challenge. The other bit, probably the most challenging part for me, I'm naturally a very, very impatient person. And with working through a team, and the team are fantastic, the guys in Austin, but working with a team where I'm not actually developing and programming the game myself, there's a lot of control taken away from me, and a lot of the time I'm kind of waiting for updates, which eventually come and sort of blow me away. But that waiting for somebody like me who's really impatient and a real control freak, that waiting between receiving an update or trying the beta or hearing back from them and things like that, that was really, really challenging, because I kind of just, I want everything now, I want everything done now, but I understand that is not possible. That's not the way things work. So I found that really tough. And I honestly, because you say what I didn't envision, I never really even thought about, needing to be very patient with this and needing to kind of calm down and waiting on other people and things like that. So that was definitely the number one challenge for me. But yeah, really good question. So the next question and the final question on the podcast is from Rob Morris. Rob asks, what roles do the rival promoters currently play, and what role do you envision them for the future? So this is kind of related to the last one. This was something that was taken out. The promoters were supposed to do more in the game, and I'll come onto that in a second. So first of all, what do they currently play? In life, we are competitive people, no more so than when we're in sport or in gaming. So when you're doing a sports game, there needs to be a real sense of competition. Having these rival promoters saying to you and laughing at you and saying that basically you're a nobody, you're rubbish. Whether or not that would happen in the real world, I highly doubt it. I think that real life promoters are probably a lot more humble than that. But creating that real sense of rivalry within the game, that you really want to beat certain promoters, that kind of helps with that competition element. And once you get hooked onto being competitive with these other promoters, that's when you can really get hooked into the whole game. So that's what they play at the moment, to kind of really give you your traditional bad guy within a game, because though it is boxing, this is still a video game. Video games need bad guys, and that's the role that they play in the game. For the future, there is so much more that can be done with them. That's why I didn't want to take them out of the game altogether, because there is so much more that can come with these. I want to be able to trade between promoters to sign fighters. I want them to try and take your fighters away from you. I want to be able to interact with them and discuss having your fighters on their shows, their fighters on your shows, and lots of other things that can be done. I want to bring in more promoters ideally. I know the artwork costs a lot because the artwork is very, very good on the promoters. But if we can bring in some more promoters in kind of the early updates, to bring in another swarm of boxers with a new promoter who's got a completely different take on it, that would be great. But there is loads and loads of stuff that we can do with the promoters in terms of interaction. I think having a relationship and having to build a strong relationship with promoters, I know from speaking with promoters that is important. It's not the most important thing in boxing, but being able to, especially if you're a smaller promoter, you need to have a good relationship with, say, an Eddie Hearn at Matchroom or a Frank Warren, to say that you want to get your fighters some exposure on Box Nation or on Sky Sports. You need to have a good relationship with them guys to be able to put forward your fighter as an opponent for one of their Sky shows, for one of their Box Nation shows. And only then can that fighter really kind of push on to the next level in terms of their fan base. So that's a very important one. So being able to build relationships, and that having some sort of a bearing over the fight person, the agreement. Once you have a better relationship with somebody, you can maybe negotiate a little bit of a better deal for your fighter. All things that some of it was in the original design and got taken out, and then other bits of it are kind of extra ideas that I've had through this process and going on from some of the feedback that you guys sent in during the beta test. So the promoters probably has the most potential of all of the sections within the game. There is loads that we can do with it, and loads that I'm sure we will do with it. So again, that was a really, really good question. So thank you to the 3 guys that sent questions in. Thanks to everyone who's listened and made it this far through the podcast. I do very, very much appreciate it. Hopefully you're enjoying listening to me about the game. I will always be as open and honest as possible. Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next week. Bye.